Diskusijų metas, jūs prašome tada kelkite ranką ir užduokite klausimus bet kuriam iš dalyvių, pranešėjų, nurodydami, kam užduodate tą klausimą. Ar turite tokių? Ar viskas jums aišku?
Vilnius, visi viešos interesų saugos institutas. Aš norėjau tiesiog paklausti tokį dalyką, su kuo mes labai susidūrėm Vilniuje, kad svarstant Astravo atominės elektrinės poveikį aplinkai, absoliučiai nesulaukėm, pavyzdžiui, Vilniaus miesto savivaldybės jokio dėmesio. Ir kai mes kreipėmės, kad į Vilniaus strateginį planą sekantiem 10-15 metų būtų įtraukta evakuacija avarijos atveju, evakuacijos būdai, komunikacija su Baltarusijos Respublika ir taip toliau, vėlgi iš esmės tai liko be atsakymų. Kaip, pavyzdžiui, tokia šalis kaip Suomija sprendžia tokius klausimus ir kaip tai yra numatyta jų urbanistiniuose strateginiuose vystymo planuose tuose regionuose, kur yra atominės energetikos objektai.
Well, as far as I'm aware, they are not assessed in any way, but I am not absolutely sure about this issue. We have been filing information requests about this issue to the nuclear regulator, but part of the documents are classified, so we don't have access to them. But on the ones that we have seen, I have not seen any kind of evacuation plans.
I have a comment on that. According to the Espoo Convention, the government authorities in one party to the convention must inform the other party. So that has happened in the case of new build plans and other plans in the Scandinavian countries. So there is always a communication between the different radiation protection authorities, and that includes evacuation, and it's been a very big concern in many cases.
Dėkui. Kas dar norite paklausti? Kaip ir kiekvieno žmogaus yra mikrofonas, galite atsidaryti tokį stalčiuką, jisai išlys mikrofonas ir galite užduoti klausimą. Bet kuriam pranešėjui. Taip, prašau.
Hello, my name is Victoria and I'm from two organizations, European Nuclear Radiation Risk, Baltic Sea Regional Office and Baltic Sea Regional Radioactivity Watch. And I wanted to thank you very much, all of the speakers, and also thank you particularly Miles Goldstick for the presentation on uranium mining, which was very valuable. And my question is to Miles is, as we are acquainted and we've been working along together. So I know that you're very well informed about United States and Canada uranium mining, and as you've been, your PhD has been written there too, and you have immigrated to Sweden and have done enormous work in Sweden and in nuclear movement. So my angle of question would be, how is this, what are the interests of United States and Canada in the Baltic Sea region? If you could elaborate on that, because obviously there is this nuclear waste planning going on and all the reactors being transfer plants to Studsvik, but there seems to be some kind of bigger strategical plan for these United States and Canada towards Baltic states and Baltic Sea region. Could you please elaborate on that?
Well, there are many connections. From the industry perspective, from the nuclear chain perspective, or the nuclear fuel chain perspective, it's very important to recognize that there are very few countries that have the whole fuel chain within their borders. And none of the Scandinavian countries do. Therefore, they are dependent on the facilities of the United States and Canada. Both, several of the countries have historically imported uranium, and there are a number of cooperation arrangements regarding different links in the fuel chain. The most obvious one is uranium mining, for example, that Sweden and Finland have both purchased uranium from Canada and the United States. Otherwise, there's been partnerships regarding construction of nuclear reactors. Of course, there is security interests among the countries, but I'm not familiar with the details. We know that NATO is involved, of course, and they use depleted uranium ammunition as standard armament. There are many aspects that can be examined.
Okay, дякую. Да, Kosovo, any questions?
Aš dar norėjau paklausti taip pat, kaip visi pasisakiusiai reaguoja į pareiškimus dėl Lenkijos atominės elektrinės statybos ir tai, ar tai yra grasinimas, ar tai iš tikrųjų yra rimti planai ir kokią jūs apie tai turite informaciją. Ačiū.
Kam orientuojat klausimus? Janas.
I'm since 1.5 years now working on the Polish nuclear energy program. The push for nuclear in Poland is to be taken seriously. It is not very clear, but I also want to make it very clear for Astravets and at least also for Vizagnas, those power stations will not be built, okay? They're too expensive. Everything we talk here about the new power station Vizagnas in Lithuania is basically a mirage. But in the end it will not be built because it is too expensive. And I think that the complications that we will see in Belarus with the financing, the Russian way of financing of that power station, it will not be finished, they will start construction. If you now look at Poland, we have a similar situation. The Polish plans are for first 1 or 2 units to be finished before roughly 20, well, let's say the official plan is 2020. The non-official plan at the moment is 2023 to 2025, because also in Poland they start to see that this is more complicated than they thought. And then expand that to roughly 6 power stations on 3 possible locations now in the Baltic Sea. A location on inland has 2 weeks ago been dropped by PGE. To what extent is the step into these programs is serious? There is a lot of pressure behind it from the utility PGE, which also occupies key positions within the ministry. And I do think that we will see in the coming time, well, we first now see the nuclear energy program. That was to be a detailed program in the energy policy from Poland. The energy policy has been set up basically as the workout of the wish list of PGE for the coming years. Nuclear power was high on their wish list, and that was translated into the nuclear energy policy. It was formulated in July 2010 and was to be adopted in October 2010, until we called the ministry and then said, what about the strategic environmental assessment? ESCO and ARUS are also valid here. And the ministry panicked because they hadn't thought of that. And then they started doing a strategic environmental assessment. And they had a report ready within 30 days, a report of 1,200 pages, for which the public got 3 weeks to react upon. It was on the 29th of December 2010. You can imagine that the first thing I did was write a letter to the ministry with a request to expand that to at least 3 months, because 3 weeks for 1,200 pages is neither or is not a realistic time. And the Aarhus Convention, ESPO Convention, and the Strategic Environmental Assessment Directive are very clear in that. That you need to have an appropriate and reasonable time. This was neither appropriate nor reasonable. We also said, and what about your transboundary strategic environmental assessment? We first didn't get an answer. On the 17th of January, I called them, and they had again panic. They said, you will get your transboundary. I said, okay. And what about a longer time? They said, we don't know yet. 17th of January, 2 days before the deadline. On the 19th of January, the day of the deadline, they said, you will get 3 months. Because I had told them I'd go to court if they didn't give it. So we got 3 months for the Polish. Then in July they sent documentation to all EU countries, and I want to laud them on that. There is a tendency, there is a line that has been set by Lithuania. You do not only inform the countries directly next to your country, but all countries that may be impacted. And Poland rightly assumed that a Polish nuclear energy program could, in case of an accident, impact all of Europe. So they informed all EU countries, and they gave the Republican EU countries 3 weeks to react. When I heard that, I contacted the German Environment Ministry, and they said, well, there are laws that prescribe that you cannot, or that forbids discrimination in this case. The Poles got 3 months. Germans are not allowed to be discriminated. They should also get 3 months. And then the ministry finally contacted the Poles and said, okay, good, we'll get 3 months until the 4th of January. After the Germans, the Austrians did the same, then the Swedes, then the Finns, then the Danes, and then the Polish got a bit in panic and said everybody can get until the 4th of January. So we see the 4th of January as the deadline for public participation in the transboundary strategic environmental assessment. It has already resulted in thousands of submissions in Germany that were sent to the Polish ministry in German. Nobody there reads German. It has to be translated. Then it has to be assessed. It has to be taken into due account. Article 8. Article 8.2 of the Aarhus Convention. Needs to be taken into due account. That will take some time. I don't think that the Polish energy program will be adopted before summer. And then, that program is lacking a lot of information. There was no comparison with alternatives. For that, it refers to the energy policy. But the energy policy also did not compare with alternatives. Which means that as soon as the program will be passed, it's very likely that there will be a court complaint on the fact that there are no alternatives included. And that there's a lot of there's no inclusion of the large accidents. There's no inclusion of the waste part of the whole nuclear program. Those are very serious omissions, and I do think that a court case will take also some time. There is a good chance that the Polish government will drop this program before that is all ended, and that they will concentrate on the energy policy and will look at alternatives and then try to include nuclear power again. My estimate is that the deadline of 2020 is not feasible for the first nuclear power station in Janowiec, by the way. 2023 is very ambitious. 2027 might be possible if there is no further glitches, which I don't think are very likely. And then we haven't talked about financing it. Yes, a serious attempt, money will be spent, but I don't believe that ever will have a nuclear power station. In the meantime, of course, investments in renewables will slow down, because people will not invest in renewable energy installations if they see a market that will be swamped with nuclear power that needs to be solved. Cost of money. So that's my big fear.
Okay. Dėkui. Gana ilgas, nebent labai trumpa tada. Okay.
I wanted to ask a question to Linus as well. How the things are going in Lithuania with this ESPO convention open door possibility to get in contact with the Swedish, at least Swedish, nuclear waste repository planners, where at least this half of the year, maybe December now, probably even in spring, any country around the Baltic Sea could oppose the plans to build the nuclear waste repository on the very shore in Sweden, as the ESPO Convention allows. And as we have studied the application that SKB, Swedish Kärnbränsle company, has left to the...
I'm sorry, I would like to interrupt you because we have meeting about the radioactive waste just right after the lunch.
Okay.
And the lunch time is equally valuable as the conference time. And I wish you to have a good lunch right now, because as I just mentioned, that we will get back to this issue right after the lunch. And we have 1 hour. There are 2 cafes here in the Parliament building, so please find your place to have lunch. Please don't be late for the afternoon session, because it's really, really important and very interesting. The nuclear waste, it's the main vulnerability of the nuclear power, and we also should give rest to our interpreters who are doing a great job helping you to understand in all languages the presentations of the conference. 1 hour break. Thanks.
Dėkui uždėmesi, gero apetito, iki pasimatymo.